So tomorrow you have a test. The test is going to have 14 questions. And it's going to cover lessons 8-7, 8-9, and 8-10. So on questions, question number 1, so actually 1 through, well, I'll just take it step by step. Number 1 is going to come from lesson 8-7. And in 8-7, this is where we were introduced to the function notation. So when you did the homework from page 380, the first question on your test is going to be like the homework you did on numbers 1 through 12, where I'm going to give you an equation or a function, and then I'm going to give you a set domain, and you're going to tell me the range values. So for example, if you did something like number 5, where it said that it was G and a colon, and then it had A arrow 4A squared minus 1. Now remember, we saw the arrow notation, and then we also saw the function notation here. On the test, it's going to be the function notation, but just remember this arrow means the same thing. And then you're going to be given a domain. So they're going to say, find the value or the range values given this. So you're going to do 3 different problems. You're going to first do 4A squared minus 1. 4A, I'm going to write it 3 times so I can show you how I'm plugging it in. So the first time I'm going to plug in -1. The second time I'm going to plug in 0. So here, when I square -1, it becomes positive. So 4 minus 1, and I get 3 for this one. And then here, 4 times 0, so that's 0 minus 1, so it's -1. And then over here, when I do it, 4 times 1 minus 1, 4 minus 1, it's 3. So my range values would be -1 and +3. You only have to list it once. So that'll be your first question on the test. Then questions 2 through 7 test are going to come from problems in the homework on page 381. And it's like 13 through 28. Now, the difference is when you did 13 through 28, each problem had a different function. So on the test, though, I'm going to give you, for example, I'll say f of x equals 5x minus 9. And then I'll say g of x equals 8 minus 4x. And then I might say h of x equals y to the third plus 8. So then in the problems, when you're answering 2 through 7, it's going to say, maybe number 2 will say, find f of 3. So then you're going to go back up and you're going to find the f of x function and you're going to plug in 3. So you would do 5 times 3 minus 9, 15 minus 9, and you're going to tell me the answer is 6. Then number 3 might say, find g of 2. And then you'll go back up, find the g function, and then plug in 2. And then do order of operations, and you get 0. So that's what you're going to do on 2 through 7. You're going to find the function and plug in the number, whatever's in the parentheses, for x. Then questions 8 and 9 on your test are going to be still from that same page, same lesson. So majority of the test is that easy 8-7 homework. So this is going to be like the problems that you did in 29 through 40. So page 381 still. And you're going to do both things. So in this homework, they told you to find f of 0 and also f of x, and this is where you set it equal to 0. So for example, if I did number 29, and this one was f of x equals 3x minus 12. So you're going to do both parts. First, you're going to plug in 0 for this part and get 0 minus 12. So it's negative 12. And then you're going to do this where you set it equal. So you take out f of x, put a 0 there, and now solve for x. And then you get x equals 4. Be familiar with the factoring questions that were down at the bottom. So remember when you did, say, number 38. You're going to plug in 0. So here's the problem. So on the question where you're going to plug in 0, you're going to do 0 plus 1, 0 minus 2, and you get 1 over negative 2, so it's negative half. On the question where it says to set it equal to 0, this is where you can multiply both sides by the x minus 2 to get it out of the bottom and get 0 equals x plus 1, and then subtract 1. So negative 1 equals x. So be able to do that. You'll have 2 of those. Then the rest of the test is going to come from 8-9 and 8-10. So you're going to get it mixed up. So you're either going to get questions for questions numbers 10 through 12. So 3 of them are either going to be worded that y varies directly as x, and then it'll say y equals 450 when x equals 6, and then it might say find y when x equals 10. So this is like numbers 1 through 10 in the homework in 8-9, and then you might also have problems like 9 through 14, I think it is, in the other lesson. So when it varies directly, this is when you would use a proportion. And then they might change the question, maybe the same information, but then they're going to say varies indirectly or inversely. So for the direct, you'll set it up as a proportion, 450 over 6, and then y over 10, cross multiply and divide. And then for the inversely, you would take the 450, multiply it by the 6, and then the y times the 10, and then solve that. Then you're going to have 2 word problems. I highly suggest that you do the problem solving on the end of the lesson. Now, I know you didn't do it for homework. Okay, so let's go ahead and practice those. So what I want you to focus on are the word problems. So page, and you do the problems on page 395. I would focus on 1 and 2. And then the same thing for lesson 10. So these are the problems for 8-9. I would also do the problems from 8-10 on page 400. Also focus on 1 and 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work those out right now. So number 1, again, and they're going to be mixed up. So I'm not going to tell you which one. You have to read the words. They're going to be very similar to these 2. So number 1 on page 395. Says an employee's wages are directly proportional. It says an employee's wages are directly proportional to the time worked. if an employee earns $100 for 5 hours, how much will the employee earn for 18 hours? So what I like to do is label what's in my proportion. So notice how I put HR next to the 5, so that way when I set up my second fraction, because it's directly proportional, I'm going to also put the hours in the bottom of the fraction. So it wants me to figure out how much money this person will earn. So that's going to be my variable. I'm going to use the cross products. I'm going to multiply 5 times x, 100 times 18. And I'll do my little trick here, where I'm just going to simplify before I multiply. I know 5 goes into 100 20 times, so I'll simplify that. And now I just have to multiply 20 times 18, and that's my answer. So it's $360. Now, if this confuses you, you will multiply and get 1,800, divide 1,800 by 5, and still get the same answer. Then on number 2, it says a certain car uses 15 gallons of gasoline, so this is the gas, in 3 hours. If the rate of gasoline consumption is constant, how much gasoline will the car use on a 35-hour trip? So here again, I'm going to put the hours across from each other, and then I need to figure out how much it's going to use. So again, cross products, 15 times 35. I can multiply 15 times 35 or simplify this, 5. And now I'll just multiply 35 times 5, and I get 175. So I like to simplify it. You don't simplify it with both of the numbers, just one. And then the 2-word problems from 8-10. Practice these. So this one is the inverse. So now instead of a proportion, I'm going to multiply the numbers. So notice here it says the number of days needed to remodel a house varies inversely as the number of people working on the job. So it says 18 weeks and 4 people. It wants to know if it has to be done in 8 weeks, how many people would you need? So you would set it up this way when it's inverse. So again, I'm going to divide by the 8. Again, I like to simplify before I multiply, and I get 9 people. Then for number 2, again, if you don't want to do that, you're going to multiply 18 times 4 and get 72 equals 8x. Divide by 8, and you still get the 9. Number 2, 3 friends on a fishing trip pay $100 each to rent a cottage. It says the cost per person varies inversely as the number of people sharing the rent. How many people would have to share the rent to make the cost $60 a person? So X is the number of people times 60. Again, I'm going to divide, so it's either 300 divided by 60x, divide by 60. I can cross those zeros off. 30 divided by 6, and it's 5 people. So focus on how to do those 4 word problems for tomorrow. You will have 2 very similar problems on the test tomorrow. So that is your test for tomorrow. Again, you have the answers to the 8-10. So what I recommend you do is, if you're doing it and you have questions, you can always email me tonight or when you get here before you start the test. So again, only 14 questions tomorrow. So that is it for your test.